Showdown in Little Tokyo is a 1991 American buddy cop action film directed by Mark L. Lester and starring Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. It was Lee's first American film role. The film was released in the United States on August 23, 1991 to poor reviews and was a financial failure. It gained a cult following among action fans, especially for the chemistry between Lundgren and Lee. 2-3. Plot. Los Angeles cop Chris Kenner, Dolph Lundgren, is an American who was raised in Japan. He is given a new partner, Johnny Murata, Brandon Lee, an American of partial Japanese descent. Kenner does not appreciate American culture, while Johnny does not like Japanese culture much. One thing they both enjoy are the martial arts, in which they are both experts. The two are assigned to L.A.'s Little Tokyo, where they break up some criminal activity in a Japanese restaurant, and an arrest is made. While Kenner and Johnny are questioning the suspect, Kenner notices that he has tattoos of the Iron Claw Yakuza clan. This reminds him of when he was 9 years old and he witnessed his parents being killed by a member of the Yakuza. Before Kenner or Murata can interrogate the suspect further, he kills himself in the interrogation room by breaking his own neck. The leader of the Iron Claw clan, Yoshida, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa, kills the owner of a popular downtown nightclub called the Bonsai Club by crushing the owner, Tanaka, Philip 10, in a car compactor. To celebrate gaining ownership of the Bonsai Club, Yoshida throws a party at his house with all of the club staff. Yoshida discovers that one of the girls at the party, Angel, Renee Griffin, had warned Tanaka about Yoshida behind his back. Yoshida summons Angel to his office to question her about her loyalty, where she attempts to appease him by offering her body to him, but Yoshida instead drugs Angel and strips off her clothes before beheading her. When the coroner runs an analysis on Angel's body, it is revealed that the methamphetamines in her system would have led to her death anyway. This discovery of drugs, together with the suspect having Yakuza tattoos, prompts Kenner and Johnny to go to the Bonsai Club in search of information. There they meet Angel's close friend, lounge singer Minako Okia, Tia Carrere. Whilst talking with Minako, Kenner and Johnny are ambushed and taken to see the nightclub's owner, and Kenner recognizes Yoshida as the man who killed his parents. Yoshida is now a drug manufacturer using a local brewery as his distribution center. He uses smaller gangs such as the Hells Angels, Crips, and Serenos to peddle the drugs for him, in return for a percentage of the profit. Enraged, Kenner pulls his gun on Yoshida and almost kills him to avenge the death of his parents, but Johnny manages to defuse the situation and they both leave the nightclub. Later that night, Yoshida rapes and kidnaps Minako and holds her hostage in his home and vows to kill Kenner. Kenner and Johnny set out for Yoshida's heavily guarded home, where they rescue Minako. His pride wounded, Yoshida sends his men out to get Minako back. He has Kenner and Johnny captured, stripped topless and tortured by electrocution. However, the two manage to escape. They prepare for an assault on Yoshida's brewery, where they rescue Minako once again. They chase Yoshida down to a parade being held in the middle of the city, where he and Kenner engage in a modern-day samurai-like sword duel. The fight ends with Kenner overpowering Yoshida and impaling him through the abdomen before throwing him into a giant spinning Catherine wheel firework display, which burns Yoshida alive before exploding and killing him. Kenner and Johnny are then hailed as heroes by the crowd as they escort Minako away from the scene. Cast: Dolph Lundgren as Sergeant Chris Kenner, Brandon Lee as Detective Johnny Murata, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa as Funki-I Yoshida, Nihongo, Yoshida Funki-I, Tia Carrere as Minako Okia, Nihongo, Okia Minako, Toshishiro Obata as Sato, Nihongo, Sato, Philip 10 as Tanaka, Nihongo, Tanaka, Rodney Kageyama as Eddie, Ernie Lively as Detective Nelson, Renee Griffin as Angel, Rita Sato as Muto, Nihongo, Muto, Takeo Fisher as Mama Yamaguchi, Simon Ree as Ito, Nihongo, Ito, Vernie Watson Johnson as Coroner Nani Russell, Lenny Imamura as Kickboxer No. 1. Roger Yuen as kickboxer number 2. Gerald Okamura as Hegata. Steve Park as Asian cop number 1. Jim Ishida as Asian cop number 2. George Chung as henchman. Nathan Yeung as bonsai club manager. Al Leong as henchman. James Liu as henchman. Branscombe Richmond as man in door. Jimmy Tenica as hardboy. Music. The film's soundtrack was released on CD and cassette on December 11, 1991. 4. Main title: The Iron Claw, Brewery Battle, Noble Quest, Death and Dishonor, Private Moment, Slippery When Wet, Yakiti Yakuza, Saving Minako, Kenner and Johnny, Brewery Bust, Hide and Seek, Little Tokyo, Heavy Metal Sushi, Into the Vat, Death and Disfiguration. Production: Lester says the film was taken over by the studio and recut without his involvement. 5. Reception. Box office. Warner Brothers was not happy with the film and re-edited it, only to give it a limited theatrical run in the United States, Mexico, Australia, France, where it skipped Paris, 6 Italy, Israel, and Hungary. Except for these markets, the film was released direct-to-video in 1992. In the US opening weekend, the film grossed $455,192 from 140 theaters, which was an average of $3,251 per theater. This accounted for 20% of the film's total gross. 178. It ranked number 9 in Hungary's top 10 of 1992 overall box office grosses, according to the 1994 Variety International Film Guide, grossing $197,590 in Hungary. After Brandon Lee's untimely death while filming The Crow, 1994, movies with Lee in leading roles, such as Showdown in Little Tokyo, saw a surge in video sales. 9. The film became a cult classic among action fans after its release. Director Mark L. Lester said, "I was going for exaggerated reality. Kind of a pop art thing or a comic book. But Warner took about 10 minutes out of the film, which were pretty good actually. They changed it all around. They didn't do a big release, but I guess people liked it." 10. Brandon Lee was also very fond of the movie. "I didn't have a lot of input into it. It was really just a job for me, but it was a good experience." 11. Critical response. The movie faced largely negative reviews from critics. 12. 13. 14. 15. Vincent Canby of the New York Times described it as violent, but spiritless. 16. It holds a rating of 33% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 9 reviews, with an average score of 4.3/10. 17. Later reviews. Upon its 2015 DVD release, DVD Talk reviewer Ian Jane wrote that it was a shallow but highly enjoyable action film of its time. He found it fast-paced, action-packed, and funny. He felt it had good photography, nice locations, and that Brandon Lee shined in his role. 18. Contemporary critic Chris Koffel of Bloody Disgusting praised it for being a well-made action film of its time, and that both leads delivered their roles well. He also praised the lead villain Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa. Finally, he felt the movie fell flat on the humorous side of things, but was great fun for its genre. 19. On Joblo.com, writer Chris Bumbray considers it to be an underrated gem and a cult classic. He thinks that Lee steals the show from Lundgren and that the film showcases the range of the early departed actor. His final thought was that it was a fun B-actioner. Hans Dolph Lundgren, /LNDRN/ Swedish, DLF Lohengrin, born November 3, 1957, is a Swedish actor, filmmaker, and martial artist. He gained recognition for portraying the Soviet boxer Ivan Drago in his breakthrough role in Rocky IV, 1985, a role he later reprised in Creed II, 2018. 1. Lundgren went on to play lead roles in over 80 action-oriented films including Masters of the Universe, 1987, Red Scorpion, 1988, The Punisher, 1989, I Come in Peace, 1990, Showdown in Little Tokyo, 1991, Joshua Tree, 1993, Men of War, 1994, Silent Trigger, 1996, and Blackjack, 1998. He continued playing villainous roles, most notably as Sergeant Andrew Scott in 3 Universal Soldier films, 1992 to 2012, co-starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Moving into the 2000s, Lundgren mostly appeared in direct-to-video films. During this time, Lundgren started directing and starring in his own films. These are The Defender, 2004, The Mechanic, 2005, Missionary Man, 2007, and Command Performance, 2009. Lundgren returned to prominence in 2010 with the role of Gunnar Jensen in Sylvester Stallone's The Expendables alongside an all-action star cast. He reprised his role in its sequels. He has since appeared in the well-received films Aquaman, 2018, Castle Falls, 2021, which he also directed, Don't Kill It, 2017, and Showdown at the Grand, 2023, among others. He has appeared in SAF 3, 2013 to 2014, and Arrow, 2016 to 2017. His voice acting work includes SEAL Team, 2021, and Minions, The Rise of Gru, 2022. Lundgren received a degree in chemical engineering from the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in the early 1980s and a master's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Sydney in 1982. He has been practicing martial arts since the age of 16, earning the rank of 4th Dan black belt in Kyokushin Karate, and becoming the European champion in 1980 and 1981. Early life. Hans Lundgren was born in Spanga, Stockholm County, Sweden to Sigrid Birgitta, née Gernald, 1932 to 1992, a language teacher, and Carl Hugo Johan Lundgren, 1923 to 2000, an engineer, Master of Science, citation needed and economist, MBA, citation needed for the Swedish government. He lived in Spanga until the age of 13, when he moved to his grandparents' home in Nyland, Angermanland. 234. Some sources wrongly state 1959 as his year of birth 5-6, but Lundgren himself has confirmed it to be 1957. 789. He has 2 sisters, Katarina and Annika, and an elder brother Johan. 4. Lundgren claims his father was physically abusive and took out his own personal frustrations on his wife and son. He has stated that, during his tirades, his father would call him a loser, which motivated him later as he grew more ambitious to prove himself. But he also said, "I still love my father, no matter what happened. There are many things about him I still admire. As a child, I was probably too much like him, very stubborn, perhaps that's what he couldn't deal with." 4. He has cited his troubled relationship with his father as the reason he developed a desire to participate in heavy contact sports such as boxing and karate. 4. Lundgren has said that, as a child, he was insecure and suffered from allergies, describing himself as a runt. 410. He showed a keen interest in drumming and had aspirations to become a rock star. 4. At age 7, he tried judo and goju-ryu. He took up Kyokushin Karate at the age of 10, and began lifting weights as a teenager. 10. Lundgren stated that, "My dad always told me that if I wanted to make something special with my life, I had to go to America." 4. After graduating from high school with straight A's, he spent time in the United States in the 1970s on various academic scholarships, studying chemical engineering at Washington State University 1976, 1977 11, and Clemson University 12 prior to serving his mandatory 1 year in the Swedish Coastal Artillery at the Coastal Ranger School. In the late 1970s, he enrolled at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm and graduated in the early 1980s with a degree in chemical engineering. 413. Amidst his years of studying, Lundgren honed his karate skills by training in a dojo for 5 years, and attained a black belt in Kyokushin by the late 1970s. He captained the Swedish Kyokushin karate team, and was a challenger at the 1979 World Open Tournament, arranged by the Kyokushin Karate Organization. 14 He won the European Championships in 1980 and 1981, and a full contact karate tournament in Australia in 1982. 15 In 1982, Lundgren graduated with a master's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Sydney. 16 During his time in Sydney, he earned a living as a bouncer in a nightclub in the notorious King's Cross area. 17. Lundgren was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to MIT in 1983. 18 However, while preparing for the move to Boston, he was spotted in the nightclub where he worked in Sydney and was hired by Grace Jones as a bodyguard, and the two became lovers. 19 He moved with Jones to New York City, where he dabbled in modeling at the Zalai agency but was described as a bit too tall and muscular for a model size 40. 4 He earned a living as a bouncer at the Manhattan nightclub The Limelight, which was housed in the former Episcopal Church of the Holy Communion, working with Chaz Palminteri. 4 In the daytime, he studied drama at the Warren Robertson Theatre Workshop and has said that my time in New York City opened up my adolescent Swedish eyes to a multitude of different people and lifestyles, mostly in the arts. I hung out with Andy Warhol, Keith Haring, Iman, and Steve Rubel, danced at Studio 54, and studied acting with Andy McDowell and Tom Hulse. 4. Friends told him he should be in movies. 4 He quit studying at MIT after 2 weeks to pursue acting. 1820 Lundgren said after being exposed to the entertainment business, he found it more attractive and rewarding than chemical engineering, so he decided to pursue a career in acting. 19. Career. 1980s to 1990s, breakthrough and action film star. Lundgren made his film debut in the 1985 James Bond film A View to a Kill, Roger Moore's final film as 007, in the minor role of Benz, a KGB assassin. 21-22 His former lover Grace Jones, who portrayed the villain Mayday, personally recommended him. 23 According to Lundgren, Moore said of him, Dolph is larger than Denmark. 24. Upon learning that Sylvester Stallone was seeking an imposing fighter to play Soviet boxer Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, 1985, Lundgren sent videos and pictures of himself to a distant contact of Stallone, eventually reaching him. Lundgren tried out for the role, but as he himself has stated, he was initially turned down because he was too tall. 25 Lundgren eventually beat 5,000 other hopefuls to land his breakout role opposite Stallone, Carl Weathers, and Brigitte Nielsen. To improve his physique and athletic abilities, he trained intensely in bodybuilding and boxing for 5 months before the film was shot. Lundgren said, "We trained 6 days a week, weights in the morning for about an hour, then boxing in the afternoon. We did a split of chest and back one day and then shoulders, legs, and arms the next. We boxed for an hour and a half, practiced the fight choreography, and did bag work and ABS." 26. He weighed 240 pounds 110 kilograms during filming 26, but in the film he was billed at 250 pounds 110 kilograms, one shipping above of Drago. He's a exceptional 260 pounds 120 kilograms of merciless fighting machine. Drago is listed come to behold 270 pounds 120 kilograms, the best that Soviet science and medicine can create. 27 His character's lines "If he dies, and I must break you" are amongst the best known of the Rocky series, and have often been cited in popular culture. 28-29 Lundgren hit Stallone so hard during the filming of a fight scene that Stallone was in intensive care in the St. John's Hospital for 9 days with a blood pressure of 290, due to swelling of the pericardial sac around his heart. 30 Lundgren later fought in a real boxing match against former UFC fighter Oleg Taktarov, and lost via decision. 31 Lundgren has highlighted the premiere of Rocky IV at the Man Village Theater 32-33-34 in Westwood, Los Angeles, as the moment which changed his life, remarking, "I walked into a Westwood movie theater as Grace Jones' boyfriend and walked out 90 minutes later as the movie star Dolph Lundgren. I was shell-shocked for years from the mind-boggling and daunting experience of being a student athlete from tiny Sweden suddenly having to live up a new action star persona." 4. In 1987, Lundgren released on home media a workout video called Maximum Potential 35, and he also got his first lead role as He-Man in Masters of the Universe, based on the popular children's toy line and cartoon, directed by Cary Goddard. 36 Lundgren weighed his all-time heaviest during the filming at 225 pounds 102 kilograms. 26 The film was a critical failure and viewed as far too violent for a family picture. 37 It is referred to as a flop by Variety magazine. 39 and has a 13% rotten rating at Rotten Tomatoes. 40 Lundgren was criticized for being too wooden as a leading man, and it was dismissed as a glossy fantasy starring monosyllabic Dolph Lundgren. 41. In 1988, he starred in Joseph Zito's Red Scorpion. Lundgren plays a Soviet KGB agent who is sent to an African country to assassinate the leader of an anti-communist rebel movement, but eventually switches sides. 42 The film was poorly received and has an 17% rotten rating at Rotten Tomatoes. 43 Stephen Holden of the New York Times said, "Dolph Lundgren's pectorals are the real stars of Red Scorpion, an action-adventure movie set in the fictional African country of Mambeka. Filmed from below so that one has the sense of peering up at a massive kinetic sculpture, his glistening torso, which over the course of the film is subjected to assorted tortures, is the movie's primary visual focus whenever the action slows down. And since Mr. Lundgren remains stone-faced, rarely speaking except to issue commands in a surprisingly hesitant monotone, his heaving chest actually communicates more emotion than his mumbling lips." 44. In 1989, Lundgren then starred as Marvel Comics adaptation The Punisher, playing the title role. Directed by Mark Goldblatt, the film changes some details of the character's origin, and eliminates the signature skull logo. These elements troubled fans of the comic book upon its release and were dismissive. Also, initial reviews found it to be a trashy comic book film. The film had a troubled release as the studios who made it were changed ownership. While the film was theatrically released internationally, the film went direct-to-video in the US. However, over the years the film developed a cult with some who think it's the best adaptation of the comic. The film was re-evaluated with a much more positive outlook, who find Lundgren's performance solid as a ghostly and soul-depraved vigilante. 45. Lundgren at the Air America premiere in 1990. In 1990, Lundgren starred in Craig R. Baxley's sci-fi thriller I Come in Peace, also known as Dark Angel, opposite Brian Benben, Betsy Brantley, Matthias Hughes, and Jay Bilas. Lundgren plays a tough Houston cop with an inner sensitivity 46 who does not let the rules of police procedure prevent him pursuing his mission to wipe out a gang of drug dealers who killed his partner. Lundgren said of his role, "What attracted me to Dark Angel is that I get to do more than just action. There's some romance, some comedy, some drama. I actually have some clever dialogue in this one. I get to act." 47. In 1991, Lundgren starred in Manny Cotto's action film Cover Up opposite Louis Gossett Jr. Lundgren portrays a U.S. Marine veteran turned reporter, who finds his own life in jeopardy after stumbling across a political cover-up. 48. In Mark L. Lester's martial arts action film Showdown in Little Tokyo, he and Brandon Lee play police officers investigating the Yakuza. 49. 50. The film received a mainly negative reception from critics and was criticized for its violence. Vincent Canby of the New York Times described it as violent, but spiritless. 51. Variety wrote, "Lundgren can hold his own with other action leads as an actor and could easily be Van Damme marketable if only he'd devote as much attention to quality control as he does to pectoral development." 52. David J. Fox of the Los Angeles Times, however, described the film as a class act, and some retrospective critics find it to be entertaining for its genre. 53, 54, 55, 56. In 1992, Lundgren starred in the sci-fi action picture Universal Soldier directed by Roland Emmerich. Lundgren, as Sergeant Andrew Scott, and Jean-Claude Van Damme, as Luke Devereaux, play U.S. soldiers who died during the Vietnam War 57 only to be later reanimated in a secret army project to be sent on missions as GR operatives. At the 1992 Cannes Film Festival, Van Damme and Lundgren were involved in a verbal altercation that almost turned physical, but it was believed to have only been a publicity stunt. 58-59 Universal Soldier opened in theaters on July 10, 1992, a moderate success domestically with $36,299,898 in U.S. ticket sales, but a major blockbuster worldwide, making over $65 million overseas, which earned the film a total of $102 million worldwide, on a $23 million budget. 60 Despite being a box office hit, it was not well received. Mainstream critics dismissed the movie as a Terminator 2 ripoff. 58 61 62 63 Film critic Roger Ebert said, "It must be fairly thankless to play lunks who have to fight for the entire length of a movie while exchanging monosyllabic idiocies," and included Universal Soldier in his book I hated this movie. 58-59. In 1993, Lundgren starred opposite Christian Alfonso and George Segal in Vic Armstrong's Joshua Tree. 64 Lundgren plays Wellman Anthony Santee, a former race car driver who is framed by police officer Frank Severance, Segal, for the murder of a highway patrolman. Much of the film was filmed in the Alabama hills of the Sierra Nevada and the desert of the Joshua Tree National Park of Southeast California. 65. In 1994, Lundgren starred in Bruce Malmuth's pentathlon as an East German Olympic gold medalist pentathlete on the run from an abusive coach. 66 Lundgren trained with the U.S. pentathlon team in preparation for the role 67, which later led to him being selected to serve as the non-competing team leader of the 1996 U.S. Olympic modern pentathlon team during the Atlanta Games, to promote the image of the sport and to coordinate planning and other details between the team and the United States Olympic Committee. 68 The film was seen negatively by most critics. Film Review said it was appallingly acted and monotonous. 69 and Video Movie Guide 2002 described it as a silly Cold War thriller. 70. Later in 1994, Lundgren appeared in Perry Lang's Men of War, scripted by John Sayles, alongside Charlotte Lewis and B.D. Wong, as Nick Gunnar, a former special ops soldier who leads a group of mercenaries to a treasure island in the South China Sea. The film was well received by some critics. One author said Men of War invokes the most vividly remembered fighting in a foreign land of recent Western history. This innovation, associating the muscle image with the Vietnam experience, is carried over into other contemporary muscle films. 71. Another said, "Fine performances by an all-star Dolph Lundgren as a mercenary assigned to convince a cast in this offbeat and disturbing film." 72. In 1995, Lundgren appeared in Robert Longo's Johnny Mnemonic, co-starring Keanu Reeves. The film portrays screenwriter William Gibson's dystopian cyberpunk view of the future, with the world dominated by megacorporations and with strong East Asian influences. 73 Reeves plays the title character, a man with a cybernetic brain implant designed to store information. Lundgren plays Carl Honig, a Jesus-obsessed hitman and street preacher who wears a robe and carries a shepherd's staff. 73-74 Critical response was negative overall. Roger Ebert said, "Johnny Mnemonic is one of the great gestures of recent cinema, a movie which doesn't deserve 1 nanosecond of serious analysis." 75. The film was a financial disappointment, grossing $19,075,720 in the domestic American market against its $26 million budget. The cloak worn by Lundgren in the film is now located in the lobby of the famous Players Coliseum in Mississauga, Ontario. It was his last theatrical release film until 2010. 76 Later in 1995, Lundgren appeared in Ted Kocheff's The Shooter, an action drama in which he plays Michael Dane, a U.S. Marshal who gets caught up in politics when he is hired to solve the assassination of a Cuban ambassador. 1996 to 2009, subsequent films and directorial efforts. In 1996, Lundgren starred in Russell Mulcahy's Silent Trigger, playing a former Special Forces agent who joins a secretive government agency as an assassin. 7778 The Motion Picture Guide to the Films of 1997 said, "This stylish but empty thriller gives square-jawed Dolph Lundgren another shot at straight-to-video immortality." 77. In 1997, Lundgren starred in Frederic Forestier's The Peacekeeper, playing Major Frank Cross of the U.S. Air Force and the only man who can prevent the president being assassinated and with the ability to thwart an imminent nuclear holocaust. The film co-starred Michael Sarrazin, Montel Williams, Roy Scheider, and Christopher Heyerdahl, and was shot on location in Montreal. 79 The film was praised for its exciting action sequences. 80 Doug Pratt described the first half of the film as excellent and described Lundgren's character as tenacious. 81 Although Robert Settle wrote The Peacekeeper trades on the presence of B-movie action star Dolph Lundgren, an actor who never became as popular as his action contemporaries Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. 82. In 1998, he appeared in Jean-Marc Pich's action/supernatural horror film The Minion alongside Françoise Robertson. Lundgren portrays Lucas Sadero, a Middle Eastern Templar and member of an order who are charged with guarding the gateway to hell that, if opened, will unleash all evil. 78 The DVD and Video Guide of 2005 described the film as being possibly one of the worst films ever. 72 Later in 1998, Lundgren appeared alongside Bruce Payne and Claire Stansfield in Sweepers as Christian Eriksen, a leading demolition expert and head of an elite team of specialists, trained to disarm minefields in a humanitarian minesweeping operation in Angola. 83 The Video Guide to 2002 said, "That noise you hear isn't the numerous on-screen explosions but action star Lundgren's career hitting rock bottom." 84. He also featured in the TV pilot Blackjack, directed by John Woo, as a former U.S. Marshal who becomes the bodyguard and detective of a young supermodel, Cam Heskin, who becomes the target of a psychotic assassin, Philip Mackenzie. 85-86 One review described the narrative as laughably stupid, while the DVD and Video Guide to 2005 said, "Dull, lightweight, made-for-TV action fully to a satisfying climax." 72-87. In 1999, Lundgren played a mercenary in Isaac Florentine's Bridge of Dragons. 88 A military pilot in Anthony Hitchcock's Stormcatcher. 78-89 And a cop who's a former boxer in Jill Rips, also directed by Hitchcock's, based on a 1987 novel by Scottish writer Frederick Lindsay. 90. In 2000, Lundgren starred in The Last Warrior as Captain Nick Preston under director Sheldon Lettich. 64 In Damian Lee's Agent Red, also known as Captured, co-starring Alexander Kuznetsov and Natalie Radford and Randolph Mantooth, Lundgren plays a soldier trapped on a submarine during the Cold War who must work with his wife, a virologist, to prevent a terrorist chemical attack against the United States. 91 After the film was completed, producer Andrew Stevens thought it was too poor to be released and multiple people had to be hired to at least make the film half competent. 92 The film was very poorly received, given its shoestring budget. The DVD and Film Guide of 2005 wrote, "Low-budget mess stars Dolph Lundgren as a Navy Special Operations commander trying to keep a deadly virus out of the hands of terrorists. This subpar effort sinks to the bottom of the ocean in a tidal wave of cliché." 93. During an interview on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno in May 2008, Gladiator director Ridley Scott said Lundgren had been considered for the part of undefeated fighter Tigress of Gaul in 2000, but was eventually rejected because as an actor, he just didn't fit in with what we were trying to achieve. 94. In 2001, Lundgren starred in Hidden Agenda, directed by Mark S. Greenier. He plays Jason Price, an ex-FBI agent who protects a witness. In 2003, Lundgren featured in Sidney J. Fury's Detention. 95-96. In 2004, Lundgren appeared opposite Polly Shannon in direct action under Sidney J. Furie, portraying Sergeant Frank Gannon, an officer who has spent the last 3 years on the Direct Action Unit, DAU, task force, fighting gang crime and corruption, and after he leaves he is hunted down by former colleagues for betraying the Brotherhood. 97. That year, he played a role in Ed Bei's comedy Fat Slags. 98. His next starring role was in the science fiction picture Retrograde. In it, Lundgren plays a man who is in a group of genetically unique people who travel back in time to prevent the discovery of meteors containing deadly bacteria. 99. In 2004, Lundgren made his directorial debut with The Defender, when he replaced Sidney J. Furie, who was sick during pre-production. Lundgren also stars, playing the bodyguard of the head of the National Security Agency during a war on terror. 100. In 2005, Lundgren starred and directed his second picture The Mechanic, aka The Russian Specialist, playing a retired Russian Special Forces hitman caught in the crossfire with Russian mobsters. Sky Movies remarked that The Mechanic is hardcore death dealing from the Nordic Leviathan and said that The Mechanic delivers all the no-nonsense gunplay you'd want of a Friday night. 101. In 2006, Lundgren played Gladiator Bruxos in the Italian-made historical/biblical drama, The Inquiry, L'inchiesta, a remake of a 1986 film by the same name, in an ensemble that includes Danielle Liotti, Monica Cruz, Max von Sydow, F. Murray Abraham and Ornella Muti. 102. Set in AD 35 in the Roman Empire, the story follows a fictional Roman general named Titus Valerius Taurus, a veteran of campaigns in Germania, who is sent to Judea by the Emperor Tiberius to investigate the possibility of the divinity of the recently crucified Jesus. 102. The film, shot on location in Tunisia and Bulgaria. 102 premiered at the Capri, Hollywood, and the Los Angeles Italia Film Festival. 102. Lundgren in 2007. In 2007, Lundgren directed and starred in the Mongolia-based action-adventure, Diamond Dogs. Lundgren plays a mercenary hired by a group of fortune hunters to act as their guide and bodyguard. The film, a Canadian-Chinese production, was shot on location in Inner Mongolia. 103. Later in 2007, Lundgren wrote, directed and starred in the modern Western film, Missionary Man alongside Charles Solomon Jr. 104. Lundgren plays a lone, Bible-preaching stranger named Ryder who comes into a small Texas town on his 1970s Harley-Davidson motorcycle to attend the funeral of his good friend JJ, a local Native American carpenter, only to later get mixed up in a series of brawls with a local gang. According to Lundgren, it had long been a desire of his to direct a Western, having long been a fan of Clint Eastwood and John Wayne, yet he did not want to spend the time and money building an old Western town and hiring horses, so decided to set it in modern times with a motorbike. 104. The film, shot on location in Waxahachie, south of Dallas, Texas, was specially screened at the 2008 AFI Dallas Film Festival. 104. 105. In 2008, Lundgren starred in the direct-to-video action flick Direct Contact. He plays an ex-US Special Forces operative on a rescue mission. This was followed by another direct-to-video film Command Performance, 2009, a hostage action drama in which Lundgren, a proficient musician in real life, plays a rock drummer forced to face terrorists at a concert. The film co-starred Canadian pop singer Melissa Smith, playing a world-famous pop singer in the film, and his own daughter, Ida, on her screen debut, who played one of the daughters of the Russian president. The story was inspired by a concert Madonna put on for Russian President Vladimir Putin, although Lundgren has also likened the pop singer to Britney Spears. 106. 107. The film premiered at the Ischia Global Film and Music Festival on July 18, 2009. 108. In 2009, the Dolph Lundgren Scholarship was instituted in his name, which is awarded to the student with the best grades at Adelsskolen in Kramfors, the school where he himself studied. 109 Lundgren then reunited with Jean-Claude Van Damme in Universal Soldier: Regeneration, where he plays Andrew Scott's clone. The film was released theatrically in the Middle East and Southeast Asia and directly to video in the United States and other parts of the world. Since its release, the film has received better than average reviews for a straight-to-DVD franchise sequel, with film critic Brian Orndorff giving the film a B, calling it moody, pleasingly quick draw, and knows when to quit, making the Universal Soldier brand name bizarrely vital once again. 110. Dread Central gave it 3 out of 5 knives, saying, "There is almost nothing but solid B-level action until the credits roll." 111. On the negative side, Pablo Villaca said in his review that while he praised Van Damme's performance, he criticized that of Lundgren and described the film dull in concept and execution. 112. Later in 2009, Lundgren directed and starred as a businessman whose shady past as a KGB special agent is discovered in the hitman thriller Icarus, retitled in the US and the UK as The Killing Machine. 113. 2010 to present day, return to prominence and current projects. Lundgren with the cast of The Expendables at Comic-Con 2010. In 2010, Lundgren made a guest star appearance on the TV series Chuck in the 4th season premiere episode, Chuck vs. the Anniversary, as Russian spy Marco, with references to Rocky IV's Ivan Drago. 114 He then played a drug-addled assassin in the ensemble action film The Expendables, in a cast which includes popular action stars such as Stallone, Jason Statham, Jet Li, and Randy Couture as a group of elite mercenaries, tasked with a mission to overthrow a Latin American dictator. It was described by Lundgren as an old-school, kick-ass action movie where people are fighting with knives and shooting at each other. 115. The film received mixed reviews from critics but was very successful commercially, opening at number 1 at the box office in the United States, the United Kingdom 116, China 117 and India 118. Lundgren was one of 3 hosts for the 2010 Melodifestivalen, where the Swedish contribution to the Eurovision Song Contest is selected. In the first installation on February 6, Lundgren co-hosted the competition together with comedian Christine Meltzer and performer Mansell Merlo. Lundgren's appearance was hailed by critics and audience, particularly his rendition of Elvis Presley's A Little Less Conversation. 119, 120, 121, 122, 123. Lundgren played the lead role in Uwe Boll's In the Name of the King 2, Two Worlds, and had supporting roles in Jonas Åkerlund's Small Apartments and a thriller called Stash House. Principal photography for Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning began on May 9, 2011 in Louisiana, and filming wrapped on One in the Chamber, co-starring Cuba Gooding Jr., around the same time. 124 The Expendables 2 entered principal photography in late September/early October 2011, with Lundgren reprising his role as Gunnar Jensen. Filming wrapped in January 2012, and it was released by Lionsgate on August 17 later that year. 108. In 2013, Lundgren starred alongside Steve Austin in The Package. Directed by Jesse Johnson, principal photography wrapped in March 2012, and the film was released on February 9, 2013. For a direct-to-DVD film, The Package was not a financial success. In its first week of release, the film debuted at number 81, grossing $1,469 at the domestic box office. 125 He starred in a number of other films later that year, including Legendary, Battle of the Damned, Ambushed, and Blood of Redemption. In 2014, Lundgren co-starred opposite Kung Le in the action film Puncture Wounds, and reprised his role as Gunnar Jensen for the 3rd time in The Expendables 3. He then wrote, produced, and starred alongside Tony Jaa and Ron Perlman in Skin Trade, an action thriller about human trafficking. 127 Principal photography started on February 2, 2014 in Thailand, and wrapped in Vancouver, April the same year. 129 The film received a limited theatrical release, followed by a Blu-ray and DVD release on August 25, 2015. 131 In February, he filmed a cameo for the Coen brothers' 2016 comedy film Hail, Caesar, portraying a Soviet submarine captain. Lundgren and Matthew Pritchard at the 2015 annual Gumball 3000 event in Stockholm, Sweden. On January 21, 2015, Lundgren started filming straight-to-video film Shark Lake on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. 132 This was followed by a further 6 weeks of filming in the Reno-Tahoe area. 133 In the film, he portrays Clint Gray, a black market dealer of exotic species responsible for releasing a dangerous shark into Lake Tahoe. 134 Directed by Jerry Dugan, the film's budget was $2 million. 133 On May 23, straight-to-video film War Pigs premiered at the GI Film Festival. In the film, Lundgren co-starred, alongside Luc Goss, as Captain Hans Picault, a French legionnaire who trains a U.S. Army infantry group to go behind enemy lines and exterminate the Nazis. In August 2015, he started filming Kindergarten Cop 2 in Ontario, Canada, a straight-to-video sequel to the 1990 comedy film that starred Arnold Schwarzenegger. 136 He portrays Agent Reed, a law enforcement officer who must go undercover as a kindergarten teacher, in order to recover a missing flash drive from the Federal Witness Protection Program. 137 Throughout that year, he starred in a number of other straight-to-video films, including the crime thriller The Good, the Bad, and the Dead. 138 And the prison film Riot. 139 He starred in the music video of Imagine Dragons' Believer, which was released on March 7, 2017. 140 In August 2017, he portrayed the future version of Gil Shepard in the sci-fi film Sharknado 5, Global Swarming. In 2018, Blackwater, an action thriller, directed by Pasha Patricky, was released. Also starred Van Damme. This was their 5th collaboration between both actors as well as the first time they appear together as on-screen allies. 142 Lundgren reprised his role of Ivan Drago from Rocky IV in Creed II, the 2018 sequel to Creed. 143 He played an older, impoverished Drago in the film, which also introduces the character's son, Victor. This marked the beginning of what New York has described as Lundgren's comeback. 144. Also that year, Lundgren appeared in the DC Extended Universe film Aquaman, from director James Wan, as the underwater King Nereus. Later in 2021, Lundgren starred and directed in the 2021 action film Castle Falls as Richard Erickson, in his first feature film as directed in nearly 12 years. In 2022, Lundgren starred in a series of Old Spice advertisements to promote a new antiperspirant line of deodorant spray. The advertisements depicted the 65-year-old actor as a young adult doing an 80s action movie spoof. 145. He would later appear in FanDuel's Powerful Hunch campaign. 146. Training and diet. Although Lundgren has never competed as a professional bodybuilder, he has been closely associated with bodybuilding and fitness since his role as Drago in the mid-1980s. Bodybuilding.com said, looking like a man in his 30s rather than his 50s, Lundgren is the poster boy of precise nutrition, supplementation, and exercise application that he has practiced for over 35 years. 147 In an interview with them, he claimed to often train up to 6 days a week, usually 1-hour sessions completed in the morning, saying that it's just 1 hour a day, and then you can enjoy the other 23 hours. 148 Although he had begun lifting weights as a teenager, He cites co-star Sylvester Stallone as the man who got him into serious bodybuilding for a period in the 1980s after he arrived in the US. 148 Stallone had a lasting influence on his fitness regimen and diet, ensuring that he ate a much higher percentage of protein and split his food intake between 5 or 6 smaller meals a day. 147 In 2023, he said in an interview that he took anabolic steroids off and on from the mid-80s to the mid-90s. 149 Lundgren has professed never to have been super strong, saying that, "I'm too tall and my arms are long. I think back then Rocky IV I was working with around 300 pounds on the bench and squat." 26. In a January 2011 interview with GQ, he announced he was working on releasing his own range of vitamins and supplements. 150 He wrote an autobiographical fitness book, Train Like an Action Hero, Be Fit Forever, published in Sweden, by Bonnier Facta, on August 9, 2011, offering tips he learned over the years to work out in various situations, with a busy schedule and a lot of traveling. 151 It also discusses a detailed account of his earlier life and troubles. He cites a better quality of life as having inspired him to maintain his physical fitness. 152. When in Los Angeles, he trains at the Equinox Gym in Westwood and previously at home in Marbella, Spain, he trained at the Chi Sport Gym in Porto Banús. 147 153 Lundgren also spars and practices karate aside from weightlifting. 148 He cites deadlifting and squats as the best exercises for muscle building. 153 Lundgren is not a heavy drinker, but has professed on many occasions to being fond of tequila and cocktails, citing his knowledge in chemical engineering as making really good drinks. 107. Personal life. Lundgren splits his time between Stockholm and Los Angeles. In addition to his native Swedish, he speaks English fluently, as well as smaller amounts of French, German, Italian, Japanese, and Spanish, but is not fluent in those 5 languages as has often been reported. 154 155. He is an avid football fan. He supported Everton when he lived in Europe, but developed more of an interest in international football tournaments, such as the UEFA European Championship and the FIFA World Cup, after moving to Los Angeles. 156. During the 1980s, Lundgren had relationships with Jamaican singer Grace Jones and American model Paula Barbieri. 157 While Lundgren was completing a master's degree in chemical engineering on an exchange program with the University of Sydney in Australia, Jones spotted him at a dance club and hired him as a bodyguard. Lundgren was whisked off to the United States, where he completed his final thesis. 158. In 1994, he married Annette Viberg, b. 1966, a jeweler designer and fashion stylist, in Marbella. 153 The couple decided they liked Marbella so much that they rented accommodations there for years, before eventually buying a family home there. 153 They have 2 daughters, Ida Sigrid Lundgren, b. 1996, and Greta Evelyn Lundgren, b. 2001, both born in Stockholm. 114 Lundgren and Viberg cited the reason for living outside Hollywood was to give their children as normal a childhood as possible. 4 In early May 2009, 3 masked burglars reportedly broke into Lundgren's Marbella home. The burglars tied up and threatened his wife, but fled when they found a family photo and realized that the house was owned by Lundgren. Lundgren later stated he believed the intruders to be Eastern European and had asked contacts in Bulgaria to investigate them, but to no avail. 159 After the incident, Lundgren's elder daughter, Ida, suffered from PTSD. His wife was the most traumatized. 160. He and his wife divorced in 2011. 161. Lundgren was in a relationship with Jenny Sanderson from 2011 to 2017. 162–163 Lundgren became engaged to Norwegian personal trainer Emma Krokdal, nearly 40 years his junior, in June 2020. 164 They married at their villa in Mykonos on July 13, 2023. 165. In May 2023, Lundgren revealed that he had been battling kidney cancer since 2015. 166, 167, 168. In February 2024, Lundgren and his wife, Emma Krokdal, officially became U.S. citizens. Brandon Bruce Lee, February 1, 1965 to March 31, 1993, was an American actor and martial artist. Establishing himself as a rising action star in the early 1990s, Lee landed what was to be his breakthrough role as Eric Draven in the supernatural superhero film The Crow, 1994. However, Lee's career and life were cut short by his accidental death during the film's production. Lee was the son of martial artist and film star Bruce Lee, who died when Brandon was 8 years old. Lee, who followed in his father's footsteps, trained in martial arts, including Jeet Kune Do, Wing Chun, Eskrima, Silat, and Muay Thai, and studied acting at Emerson College and the Lee Strasberg Theatre and Film Institute. Lee started his career with leading roles in the Hong Kong action film Legacy of Rage, 1986, and the straight-to-video Laser Mission, 1989, which was a financial success on home video. Lee also appeared in 2 spin-offs of the 1970s series Kung Fu, the television film Kung Fu, the movie, 1986, and the pilot Kung Fu, The Next Generation, 1987. Transitioning to Hollywood productions, Lee first starred in the Warner Brothers buddy cop film Showdown in Little Tokyo, 1991, co-starring Dolph Lundgren. While it did not do well with audiences and critics upon its release, it later became a cult film. This was followed by a leading role in Rapid Fire, 1992, produced by 20th Century Fox. Lee, alongside Jeff Imada, is also credited for the fight choreography, which contained elements of Jeet Kune Do. Though the film was not well received, critics praised Lee's on-screen presence. After being cast to headline The Crow, Lee had filmed nearly all of his scenes when he was fatally wounded on set by a prop gun. Lee posthumously received praise for his performance, while the film became a critical and commercial success. His career has drawn parallels with his father's, both men having died young prior to the release of their breakthrough films. Early life. Brandon and his father around 1966. Brandon was born on February 1, 1965, at East Oakland Hospital in Oakland, California. The son of martial artist and actor Bruce Lee, 1940–73, and Linda Lee Cadwell, née Emery. 2-3 From a young age, Lee learned martial arts from his father, who was a well-known practitioner and a martial arts movie star. Lee said the family lived between Hong Kong and the United States, due to his father's career. While visiting his father's sets, Lee became interested in acting. Lee's father died suddenly in 1973, leaving a legacy that made him an icon of martial arts and cinema. For Grace Ho, Lee's grandmother, said that by the age of 5, he could kick through an inch board. 5. Afterwards, Lee's family moved back to California. Lee began studying with Dan Innocentug, one of his father's students, when he was 9. 6 Later in his youth, Lee also trained with Richard Bustillo 7 and Jeff Imada. Imada said that when Lee was in his teens, he struggled with his identity, and having to train in dojos which included large photos of his father troubled him. According to Imada, this led Lee to leave martial arts in favor of soccer. Both would reconnect later in their film careers, with Imada working as stunt and fight coordinator in several of Lee's upcoming films. Meanwhile, Lee was a rebellious high school student. In 1983, 4 months prior to his graduation, Lee was asked to leave the Chadwick School for misbehavior. That year Lee received his GED from Miralist High School. 8. Lee pursued his studies in New York City, where he took acting lessons at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. Lee went on to Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts, where he majored in theater. During this time, Lee appeared in several stage productions. 4. He was part of the Eric Morris American New Theater. With them he acted in John Lee Hancock's play Full-Fed Beast. 8. Career. 1985 to 1990, early roles. Lee returned to Los Angeles in 1985 and worked as a script reader. During this period, he was approached by casting director Lynn Stallmaster and successfully auditioned for his first credited acting role in Kung Fu, the movie. 9. It was a feature-length television movie that was a follow-up to the 1970s television series Kung Fu, with David Carradine returning as the lead. 10. On set Lee reconnected with his former instructor Jeff Imada, who worked in the stunt department. Imada said Lee had to be talked into accepting the role, since the martial arts nature of the film did not appeal to Lee, who avoided any connection with his father's genre of film. 11. In the film, the character of Kwai Chang Caine, Carradine, has a conflict with his illegitimate son, Lee. 12. Kung Fu, the movie first aired on ABC on February 1, 1986. 13. Lee said that he felt there was some justice in being cast for this role in his first feature, since the TV show's pilot had been conceived for his father. 4. That year saw the release of Ronnie Yu's Hong Kong action crime thriller Legacy of Rage. This was Lee's first leading film role. 14. Yu said that Lee and him did not get along during shooting. 15. In the film, Lee plays a young man blamed for a crime he did not commit. 16. It was the only film Lee made in Hong Kong, and in Cantonese. Lee was nominated for a Hong Kong Film Award for Best New Performer in this role. 17. The film was a critical success at the 1987 Cannes Film Festival, and was a commercial success in Japan. 18. In 1987, Lee starred in another spin-off of Kung Fu, the unsold television pilot Kung Fu, The Next Generation. 19. On June 19, it aired on CBS Summer Playhouse, a program that specialized in rejected pilots and allowed the audience to call in to vote for a show to be picked up as a series. 20. The plot centered on the grandson and great-grandson, Lee, of the main character from the original series. The pilot was poorly received and not picked up as a series. 21-22. In 1988, Lee had a role in What's in a Name, an episode of the American television series O'Hara, starring Pat Morita. 23. He portrayed the main villain, the son of a Yakuza. Jeff Imada, who worked as stunt coordinator, said that Lee was recommended not to do the role due to the nature of the character. However, Lee saw it as a chance to expand his acting range, and took the role. 11. In 1990, Laser Mission was released. 24. Filmed in Namibia. 25. Lee stars as mercenary on a mission. 26. Distributed by Turner Home Entertainment, it was a commercial success on home video. 27. The film was generally panned by critics, although a few considered it an amusing action B-movie. 28. 29. 30. In the 1980s, Lee started to train again with Dan Inocentu. 31. Inocentu said that Lee would bring a camera to the training facilities to see which techniques looked good on screen. 6. Also around this time, Margaret Loesch, Marvel CEO from 1984 to 1990. 32. Had a meeting with Lee and his mother through comic book writer Stan Lee, no relation. Stan Lee felt that Brandon would be ideal in the role of superhero Shang-Chi in a film or television adaptation. 33. 1991 to 1993, Hollywood breakthrough. In April 1991, Lee was in Universal Pictures' list of contenders to play his father in the biopic Dragon, The Bruce Lee Story, 1993. 34. He turned the role down, finding it awkward to play his father, and too strange to approach the romance between his parents. 35. Also, producer Rafaela De Laurentiis said he did not look Chinese enough and that she would have refused to work on the project if they had to resort to making Brandon appear more Asian. 36. The role went to Jason Scott Lee, no relation, who said he was initially intimidated by his role as Bruce Lee but that he overcame his fear after speaking to Brandon. According to Jason, Brandon told him the following in regards to the role. He said, "I wouldn't survive in this part if I treated his father like a god." He said his father was, after all, a man who had a profound destiny, but he was not a god. He was a man who had a temper, a lot of anger, who found mediocrity offensive. Sometimes he was rather merciless. Director Rob Cohen said he spent hours talking to Brandon during preparations. 37. On August 23, 1991, Mark L. Lester's Showdown in Little Tokyo premiered, which Warner Brothers produced and distributed. Lee starred opposite Dolph Lundgren in the buddy cop action film. Lee secured his role on October 13, 1990, to make his American feature debut. It was meant to start shooting after his casting but was delayed until the following January. 38 in the film, Lee and Lundgren play cops who are partnered to investigate Yakuza. 39 in the US, the domestic gross was $2,275,557. 40 The movie faced largely negative reviews 41, 42, 43 retrospectively, however, some critics find it entertaining for its genre. 44, 45, 46. While visiting Sweden, Lee was among the cameos in the locally made genre film Sex, Lagner och Video Valt, 2002, 47 filmed between 1990 and 1993. The film was completed in 2000. 48. Lee's next film was 20th Century Fox's Rapid Fire, which premiered on August 22, 1992, and was directed by Dwight H. Little. 49 Lee plays a student named Jake Lowe who witnesses a murder and is put in a witness protection program. 50 The film came about when producer Robert Lawrence started working with Lee and noticed his potential to be an action leading man in Hollywood after screening Lee's earlier project Legacy of Rage. 51 Lee was involved with the story development, and connected with the plot point where his character loses his father. 49 Jeff Imada, the film's stunt coordinator, witnessed Lee bringing a book of work by his father to emotionally prepare himself in the scene where the character loses his dad. Imada also said Lee put on muscle for the role. 52 Lee and Imada are credited for the fight choreography. 49 The fighting style contain elements of Lee father's Jeet Kune Do. 53 Lee was allowed to add some touches of his own humor to the script. On playing the character of Jake Lowe, Lee said, "I always saw that character as not being gung-ho to get himself involved in those situations. I wanted to keep that throughout the film, that sarcastic edge. So he's not just becoming Joe action hero." 4. In the US, the film is debuted at number 3 at the box office 54, making $4,815,850. After its 19 weeks run in cinemas, it made a total of $14,356,479. 55 Most critics did not like the film, but many of them found Lee charismatic. 56, 57, 58 A minority of critics found Rapid Fire to be slick, well acted, and a serviceable action film. 59, 60, 61 Also that year, it was reported that Lee signed a 3-picture deal with 20th Century Fox and a multi-picture deal with Carrere Pictures. For that year, according to John Lee Hancock, Lee read the first draft of The Little Things, 2021, and was interested to act in it. 62. In the fall, while doing publicity for Rapid Fire, Lee landed the lead role in Alex Proyas' The Crow, an adaptation of a comic book by the same name. 63 It tells the story of Eric Draven, Lee, a rock musician raised from the dead by a supernatural crow to avenge his own death as well as the rape and murder of his fiancée by a dangerous gang in his city. 64 According to producer Jeff Most, Lee had good insight on the character and liked the lyrical lines within the script, but did not want the dialogue to spread aimlessly. Clarification needed, hence, Lee focused on the brevity and rhythm of the lines of dialogue to make the character threatening. In preparation for the fight sequence, Most said that director Proyas and Lee studied martial arts movies. Also, according to most, Lee did not want metaphysical characters besides his own in the film. 65 Costumer Roberta Bile said that Lee modeled Draven after singer Chris Robinson. 66 Lee convinced the team to hire Jeff Imada, who became the stunt coordinator. 67 He and Imada oversaw the fight choreography. 68 Imada and Lee agreed that the character of Eric Draven would not do conventional martial arts moves, his movements would be unique. He is a character without formal martial arts training who was given supernatural abilities upon resurrection. With this in mind, they added aerobics to Draven's fighting style. Both Imada and most said Lee was pleased to incorporate his martial arts to the design of the character, without it being part of the story. 69 Imada said that in order to look like a rocker and not an action hero, Lee went on a strict diet weeks before shooting in order to remove a lot of bulk, and would even weigh the food he ate. Lee also focused on cardiovascular exercise with a Stairmaster, did repetitions on lighter weights to elongate and stretch his muscles, and did aerobics to lose body fat rapidly. 66 During pre-production, Imada said that in order to get into character for the resurrection, Lee bought bags of ice in which he submerged himself, because Lee hypothesized that the feeling of resurrection must be freezing cold. The resurrection scene was shot the first night of production, during the winter. Imada was surprised that Lee requested the bags of ice because of the weather, and the fact that he was already barefoot and bare naked. 70 Key hairstylist Michelle Johnson 71 said that in rain scenes Lee would soak himself prior to filming the scenes, where he would act without a shirt in cold weather. The film crew was impressed with his performance and dedication. 72 Death. On March 31, 1993, Lee was filming a scene for the film The Crow in which his character is shot and killed by thugs. 73 In the scene, Lee's character walks into his apartment and discovers his fiancée being beaten and raped, and a thug played by actor Michael Massey fires a Smith & Wesson Model 629.44 Magnum revolver at Lee's character as he walks into the room. 74 In a film shoot prior to the fatal scene, the gun that was used as a prop, a real revolver, was loaded with improperly made dummy rounds, improvised from live cartridges that had the powder charges removed by the special effects crew, so in close-ups the revolver would show normal-looking ammunition. During the fatal scene, which called for the revolver to be fired at Lee from a distance of 3.6 to 4.5 meters, 12 to 15 feet, the dummy cartridges were replaced with blank rounds, which contained a powder charge and the primer, but no solid bullet, allowing the gun to be fired with sound and flash effects without the risk of an actual projectile. However, the gun was not properly checked and cleared before the blank was fired, and a piece of the dummy bullet was lodged in the barrel. That piece of plastic was then propelled forward by the blank's propellant and shot out the muzzle with almost the same force as if the round were live, striking Lee in the abdomen at lethal velocity. 75 76 77 After Massey pulled the trigger and shot Lee, Lee fell backwards instead of forwards as he was supposed to. When the director said cut, Lee did not stand up and the crew thought he was either still acting or joking. Jeff Imada, who immediately checked Lee, noticed something wrong when he came close and noted Lee was unconscious and breathing heavily. Medic Clyde Basie went to Lee and shook him to see if he was dazed by hitting his head during the fall, but did not think Lee had been shot since there was no visible bleeding. Basie took Lee's pulse, which was regular, but within 2 to 3 minutes it slowed down dramatically, and stopped. 78 Lee was rushed to the New Hanover Regional Medical Center in Wilmington, North Carolina. Attempts to save him were unsuccessful and after 6 hours of emergency surgery, Lee was pronounced dead on March 31, 1993, at 1:03 p.m. He was 28 years old. The shooting was ruled an accident due to negligence. 79 Lee's death led to the re-emergence of conspiracy theories surrounding his father's similarly early death. 80 Lee was buried next to his father at the Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington. A private funeral attended by 50 took place in Seattle on April 3. The following day, 200 of Lee's family and business associates attended a memorial service at actress Polly Bergen's house in Los Angeles. Among the attendees were Kiefer Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, David Hasselhoff, Steven Seagal, David Carradine, and Melissa Etheridge. 81-82. The graves of Bruce and Brandon Lee. In August 1993, Lee's mother, Linda Lee Cadwell, filed a lawsuit against the filmmakers alleging negligence in the death of her son. The suit was settled 2 months later under undisclosed terms. 76-83. In an interview just prior to his death, Lee quoted a passage from Paul Bowles' book The Sheltering Sky 84, which he had chosen for his wedding invitations. It is now inscribed on his tombstone. Because we don't know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood, an afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it? Perhaps 4 or 5 times more. Perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20. And yet it all seems limitless. 85. Legacy. After Lee's death in 1993, his fiancée Eliza Hutton and his mother supported director Proyas' decision to complete The Crow. 86. At the time of Lee's death, only 8 days were left before completion of the movie. 75. A majority of the film had already been completed with Lee, and he was only required to shoot scenes for 3 more days. To complete the film, stunt doubles Chad Stahelski and Jeff Cottiant served as stand-ins. Special effects were used to give them Lee's face. 87. Lee's on-set death paved the way for deceased actors to complete or have new performances, since pioneering CGI techniques were used to complete The Crow. 88. A month later, it was reported that Lee's previous films Laser Mission, Showdown in Little Tokyo, and Rapid Fire saw a surge in video sales. 89. On April 28, Dragon, the Bruce Lee story premiered at the Mann's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. The film is dedicated to Brandon with the quote, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." The event was considered a celebration of both Brandon and his father Bruce. 34. Brandon's mother Linda and sister Shannon attended the premiere. Linda found the film to be excellent and a great tribute to her whole family. 90. In 1994, The Crow opened at number 1 in the United States in 1,573 theaters, grossing $11.7 million, averaging $7,485 per theater. 91. The film ultimately grossed $50.7 million, above its $23 million budget, 24th among all films released in the US that year and 10th among R-rated films released that year. It was the most successful film of Lee's career, and is considered a cult classic. 92. 93. 94. The film is dedicated to him and his fiancée Eliza Hutton. 64. The Crow has an approval rating of 87% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 75 reviews. Critical consensus: there is, filled with style and dark, lurid energy, The Crow is an action-packed visual feast that also has a soul in the performance of the late Brandon Lee. 95. The Crow has a score of 71 out of 100 on Metacritic based on 14 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 96. Reviewers praised the action and visual style. 97. 98. Rolling Stone called it a dazzling fever dream of a movie. Karen James, writing for the New York Times, called it a genre film of a high order, stylish and smooth. Roger Ebert called it a stunning work of visual style. 98. 99. 100. The Los Angeles Times also praised the film. 101. 102. Lee's death was alleged to have a melancholic effect on viewers. Desson Howe of the Washington Post wrote that Lee haunts every frame, and James Berardinelli called the film a case of art imitating death, and that specter will always hang over The Crow. 97. 98. 103. Jessica Zeigel of the Chicago Tribune found that Lee never quite left the shadow of his father and that The Crow did not live up to Lee's full unexploited potential. 104 Ember McKee of the Park Record considered it a good film but an eerie conclusion to Lee's career, since he had wanted to escape the action genre and move on to dramatic roles. 105 Berardinelli called it an appropriate epitaph to Lee, Howe called it an appropriate send-off, and Ebert stated that not only was this Lee's best film, it was also better than any of his father's. 97, 98, 103 The Crow retained a loyal following many years after its release. 93 Due to the source material and Lee's fate, it is often described as a goth cult film. 106 In 1998, Legacy of Rage was released in the US to Home Media 17 and Australia the next year. 107 The film has been described as stylistic and fast-paced, with a good performance by Lee. 108, 109, 110, 107 Martial arts and philosophy. Lee was trained from a young age by his father Bruce Lee in martial arts. 111 During this time, martial artist Bob Wall, a friend and collaborator of Bruce, observed that Lee hit with power and had good footwork. 112 At age 8, after his father's death, Bruce's disciple Dan Inocento trained Lee. 6 According to Jeff Imada, who at the time was helping with children's classes at Inocento's Cary Institute, the fact that he was the son of one of its founders was kept quiet. Lee had difficulty focusing due to seeing his father's photos taking so much space in his studio. Imada said Lee stopped training in his mid-teens to play soccer. 8 Richard Bustillo also trained Lee during his teens and said that Lee worked hard and was always respectful. 82 Lee said that with his training arnis with Inocento he specialized in both Kali and Eskrima and lasted 3 to 4 years. 113 In 1986, Lee said that he was training in Yi Chuan Tao, a relaxation-based martial art, with a trainer named Mike Vendrule. Lee said that it consisted of exercises such as slow sparring, Chi Sao practice. They also worked on a wooden dummy, as well as Vendrule swinging a staff at him while he would duck or jump over. He said later that the exercise helped him be less tense. 114 Also in the 1980s, Lee returned to Dan Inocento's academy. 31 Lee said he did a few amateur fights but did not seek to compete in tournaments. 4 He would bring a camera to Inocento's studio. Both would choreograph fights for Lee's films and would allow him to see how various moves played out on screen. During this time, Lee also trained in weapon-based martial arts such as Eskrima and Silat. 115 In 1991, Lee was certified by the Thai Boxing Association. 6 While his main goal was dramatic acting, he credited his skill in martial arts to have helped him to get roles that require it. 4 During the filming of The Crow, Lee said he did cardiovascular exercises to the point of exhaustion using a jump rope, running, riding a life cycle, or using a stairmaster, after which he would train at Inocento's academy where he took Muay Thai classes. 116 According to Lee's mother, years prior to his death Lee became consumed with his father's written philosophy, taking lengthy notes. 6 When asked which martial arts he practiced, he responded, "When people ask me that question, I usually say that my father created the art of Jeet Kune Do and I have been trained in that. However, that's a little too simple to say because Jeet Kune Do was my father's very personal expression of the martial arts. So I always feel a little bit silly saying I practice Jeet Kune Do, although I certainly have been trained in it. It would be more accurate to say that I practice my own interpretation of Jeet Kune Do, just as everyone who practices Jeet Kune Do does." 117 In August 1992, Bruce Lee biographer John Little asked Brandon Lee what his philosophy in life was, and he replied, "Eat or die." 118 Brandon later spoke of the martial arts and self-knowledge. "Well, I would say this, when you move down the road towards mastery of the martial arts and you are constantly moving down that road, you end up coming up against these barriers inside yourself that will attempt to stop you from continuing to pursue the mastery of the martial arts. And these barriers are such things as when you come up against your own limitations, when you come up against the limitations of your will, your ability, your natural ability, your courage, how you deal with success and failure as well, for that matter. And as you overcome each one of these barriers, you end up learning something about yourself. And sometimes, the things you learn about yourself can, to the individual, seem to convey a certain spiritual sense along with them. It's funny, every time you come up against a true barrier to your progress, you are a child again. And it's a very interesting experience to be reduced, once again, to the level of knowing nothing about what you're doing. I think there's a lot of room for learning and growth when that happens if you face it head on and don't choose to say, screw that. I'm going to do something else. We reduce ourselves at a certain point in our lives to kind of solely pursuing things that we already know how to do. You know, because you don't want to have that experience of not knowing what you're doing and being an amateur again. And I think that's rather unfortunate. It's so much more interesting and usually illuminating to put yourself in a situation where you don't know what's going to happen, than to do something again that you already know essentially what the outcome will be within 3 or 4 points either way. 119. Personal life. See also, Ho Tong family. Li's paternal great-grandfather was Ho Kam Tong, a Chinese philanthropist who was the half-brother of businessman and philanthropist Sir Robert Ho Tung. 120. Li's mother, Linda Emery, has Swedish and German ancestry. Li's father has been said to have proudly told everyone about his newborn son Brandon's diverse features, describing him as perhaps the only Chinese person with blonde hair and gray eyes. 121. He was the brother of Shannon Li. 122. According to Chuck Norris, a friend and collaborator of Li's father, he lived not far from their home in California and spent time with him as a child, telling him about his father. Norris also explained that his son, Eric Norris, and Li were childhood friends. 123. John Lee Hancock said he had a friendship with Li, who would read all of his scripts. 62. Li was also friends with George Clooney and Miguel Ferrer. Clooney stated, "My cousin Miguel Ferrer was gonna be his best man the next week at their wedding. Brandon and I played ball and hung out at the Hollywood YMCA 3 days a week, we were buddies and this was his big break." 124. Li was also a friend of Chad Stahelski, his double after his death during The Crow. The two trained together at the Innocent II Martial Arts Academy. 125. In 1990, Li met Eliza Hutton at director Rennie Harlin's office, where she was working as his personal assistant. Li and Hutton moved in together in early 1991 and became engaged in October 1992. 126. They planned to get married in Ensenada, Mexico, on April 17, 1993, a week after Li was to complete filming on The Crow. Althea Ray do Rio Janeiro 1, born January 2, 1967, 2 known professionally as Tia Carrere, /KRR/, is an American actress and singer who got her first big break as a regular on the daytime soap opera General Hospital. Carrere played Cassandra Wong in the feature films Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2, Juno Skinner in True Lies, Nanny Pelikai in the Lilo and Stitch films and TV series, Queen Tirani in Duck Dodgers, Richard Lewis' girlfriend, Cha-Cha, in Curb Your Enthusiasm, and starred as Sydney Fox in the television series Relic Hunter, as well as Lady Danger opposite RuPaul in Netflix's AJ and the Queen. Carrere also appeared as a contestant in the second season of Dancing with the Stars and the fifth season of The Celebrity Apprentice. In addition to acting, Carrere has won 2 Grammy Awards for her music. Early life. Althea Ray do Rio Janeiro was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. She is the daughter of Audrey Lee Janeiro, a computer supervisor, and Alexander Janeiro, a banker. 13. She is of Filipino and Chinese descent. 4. Her father was born and raised in Cebu. 5. Carrere attended Sacred Hearts Academy, an all-girls school. She longed to be a singer as a child. 6. Though she was eliminated during the first round of her 1985 Star Search appearance at the age of 18, She was spotted by the parents of a film producer while shopping at a Waikiki grocery store and was cast in the film Aloha Summer 7/8. Around this time, she adopted her stage name by using her sister's nickname for her, Tia, and a variation of the last name Carrere in tribute to actress Barbara Carrera. 9. Film and television career. Following this success, Carrere returned to Los Angeles, and after working several months as a model, was hired in early 1985 for her first television role, a guest appearance on an episode of the American series Airwolf. The episode aired in November 1985, after her first on-screen television appearance, in a March 1985 episode of Cover Up. Her first major breakthrough was in the daytime soap opera General Hospital, where she played the role of Jade Seung Chung from 1985 to 1987. She had a guest appearance on the A-Team, which was supposed to lead to her joining the cast. Her General Hospital obligations, however, prevented her from joining the team, so her character was dropped after one episode, and was never mentioned again. She also made guest appearances on MacGyver as a karate instructor in the episode The Wish Child and later as an assassin in the episode Murderer's Sky. She also appeared on Anything But Love as the adopted daughter of Marty Gold, Richard Lewis, and on an episode of Married, with Children as Piper Bauman, a modeling rival of Kelly Bundy. After appearing in the 1991 action films Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man and Showdown in Little Tokyo, she emerged into the public spotlight when cast as Cassandra, a rock singer and love interest of Mike Myers' character, Wayne Campbell, in Wayne's World, 1992, a role she reprised the next year in Wayne's World 2. A trained singer, Carrere performed all of her own songs in the first film, and the Wayne's World soundtrack features her vocals. She turned down a role in Baywatch to audition for Wayne's World. In 1992, People named her to its annual 50 Most Beautiful People list. Other roles in prominent films include the parts of wealthy smuggler Juno Skinner in True Lies, a 1994 Arnold Schwarzenegger action film, a mixed African-Japanese computer expert in Rising Sun, a thriller co-written for the screen by Michael Crichton and based on his novel, starring Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes, Robert Gina Walker in The Immortals in 1995, and Secretary Victoria Chappelle in High School High, a 1996 parody. She also starred as Ori, a space marine turned pirate, in the 1995 adventure/puzzle game The Deadless Encounter. She appeared as the evil witch/queen in the 1997 Universal Films picture called The Conqueror, co-starring versus Kevin Sorbo, and starred in late-90s M&M's commercials as herself. At the end of the decade, she was cast as Anna Ishikawa in the motion picture of the comic book character She, which went unproduced. 10. Carrere at the premiere of Up in May 2009. From 1999 to 2002, Carrere starred as archaeology professor Sidney Fox in Relic Hunter, a syndicated action-adventure series reminiscent of Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider. At this time, Carrere was featured in the men's magazine Maxim. Relic Hunter lasted for 3 contracted television seasons. Carrere then provided the voice of Lilo's sister Nanny in the animated film Lilo and Stitch, 2002, and its spin-offs, as well as the voice of Queen Tyranny from the 2003 Duck Dodgers animated series. She also provided the voice of Snooki in the 2005 animated film Aloha, Scooby-Doo. 11. She participated as a contestant on the popular reality show Dancing with the Stars, and eventually placed 6th overall. Carrere later participated in the 5th season of The Celebrity Apprentice, but her apprenticeship to Donald Trump, the boss of the show, was terminated in that season's 5th week. Carrere posed nude for the January 2003 issue of Playboy. The photos were republished in the German December 2006 issue of the magazine. She has appeared as a guest star on a number of television shows, including Back to You, Nip/Tuck, and Warehouse 13. She has also appeared in several episodes of Season 6 of Curb Your Enthusiasm as Richard Lewis's girlfriend. In 2020, Carrere played Lady Danger in all 10 episodes of the Netflix series AJ and the Queen. 12. Music career. Carrere at the Filipino-American Library Spirit Awards, 2006. Carrere also maintains a singing career. In 1993, her first solo album, Dream, produced by Matt Prince, was released and went platinum in the Philippines. That same year, she was featured on the soundtrack of Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, performing the ending theme, I Never Even Told You. Carrere then focused on Hawaiian music, starting with her second album, Hawaiiana, which was released in June 2007 and featured Grammy Award-winning record producer Daniel Ho accompanying her on slack key guitar and ukulele. The album was nominated for a 2008 Grammy Award under the category Best Hawaiian Music Album. 13. In 2009, Carrere served as co-host for the pre-Grammy Awards telecast online event alongside Wayne Brady. 14. She won a Grammy Award in 2009 for her third album, Ikena, and her 2010 album Hinani was also nominated for a Grammy. In 2011, she won her second Grammy Award for her album Huana Ke Aloha. 15-16. Personal life. Carrere married film producer Eli Samaha in 1992. 7. Samaha and Carrere divorced in February 2000. 17. On November 30, 2002, she married photojournalist Simon Wackelin. They have a son, Jude. On April 2, 2010, Carrere filed for divorce in person at Los Angeles County Superior Court. According to court documents, she cited irreconcilable differences as the reason for the divorce and asked for sole physical custody of their child. 18. Their divorce was finalized in August 2010, with the two reportedly sharing custody of their child. 19. As of 2010, Carrere lives in Los Angeles. Showdown in Little Tokyo is a 1991 American buddy cop action film directed by Mark L. Lester and starring Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. It was Lee's first American film role. The film was released in the United States on August 23, 1991 to poor reviews and was a financial failure. It gained a cult following among action fans, especially for the chemistry between Lundgren and Lee. 2-3. Plot. Los Angeles cop Chris Kenner, Dolph Lundgren, is an American who was raised in Japan. He is given a new partner, Johnny Murata, Brandon Lee, an American of partial Japanese descent. Kenner does not appreciate American culture, while Johnny does not like Japanese culture much. One thing they both enjoy are the martial arts, in which they are both experts. The two are assigned to L.A.'s Little Tokyo, where they break up some criminal activity in a Japanese restaurant, and an arrest is made. While Kenner and Johnny are questioning the suspect, Kenner notices that he has tattoos of the Iron Claw Yakuza clan. This reminds him of when he was 9 years old and he witnessed his parents being killed by a member of the Yakuza. Before Kenner or Murata can interrogate the suspect further, he kills himself in the interrogation room by breaking his own neck. The leader of the Iron Claw clan, Yoshida, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa, kills the owner of a popular downtown nightclub called the Bonsai Club by crushing the owner, Tanaka, Philip 10, in a car compactor. To celebrate gaining ownership of the Bonsai Club, Yoshida throws a party at his house with all of the club staff. Yoshida discovers that one of the girls at the party, Angel, Renee Griffin, had warned Tanaka about Yoshida behind his back. Yoshida summons Angel to his office to question her about her loyalty, where she attempts to appease him by offering her body to him, but Yoshida instead drugs Angel and strips off her clothes before beheading her. When the coroner runs an analysis on Angel's body, it is revealed that the methamphetamines in her system would have led to her death anyway. This discovery of drugs, together with the suspect having Yakuza tattoos, prompts Kenner and Johnny to go to the Bonsai Club in search of information. There they meet Angel's close friend, lounge singer Minako Okia, Tia Carrere. Whilst talking with Minako, Kenner and Johnny are ambushed and taken to see the nightclub's owner, and Kenner recognizes Yoshida as the man who killed his parents. Yoshida is now a drug manufacturer using a local brewery as his distribution center. He uses smaller gangs such as the Hells Angels, Crips, and Serenos to peddle the drugs for him, in return for a percentage of the profit. Enraged, Carrere pulls his gun on Yoshida and almost kills him to avenge the death of his parents, but Johnny manages to defuse the situation and they both leave the nightclub. Later that night, Yoshida rapes and kidnaps Minako and holds her hostage in his home and vows to kill Carrere. Carrere and Johnny set out for Yoshida's heavily guarded home, where they rescue Minako. His pride wounded, Yoshida sends his men out to get Minako back. He has Carrere and Johnny captured, stripped topless and tortured by electrocution. However, the two manage to escape. They prepare for an assault on Yoshida's brewery, where they rescue Minako once again. They chase Yoshida down to a parade being held in the middle of the city, where he and Carrere engage in a modern-day samurai-like sword duel. The fight ends with Carrere overpowering Yoshida and impaling him through the abdomen before throwing him into a giant spinning Catherine wheel firework display, which burns Yoshida alive before exploding and killing him. Carrere and Johnny are then hailed as heroes by the crowd as they escort Minako away from the scene. Cast: Dolph Lundgren as Sergeant Chris Carrere, Brandon Lee as Detective Johnny Murata, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa as Funki-I Yoshida, Nihongo, Yoshida Funki-I, Tia Carrere as Minako Okiya, Nihongo, Okiya Minako, Toshishiro Obata as Sato, Nihongo, Sato, Philip Ten as Tanaka, Nihongo, Tanaka, Rodney Kageyama as Eddie, Ernie Lively as Detective Nelson, Renee Griffin as Angel, Rita Sato as Muto, Nihongo, Muto, Takeo Fisher as Mama Yamaguchi, Simon Ree as Ito, Nihongo, Ito, Bernie Watson Johnson as Coroner Nani Russell, Lenny Imamura as Kickboxer No. 1, Roger Yuen as Kickboxer No. 2, Gerald Okamura as Hegata, Steve Park as Asian Cop No. 1, Jim Ishida as Asian Cop No. 2, George Chung as Henchman, Nathan Young as Bonsai Club Manager, Al Leong as Henchman, James Liu as Henchman, Branscombe Richmond as Man in Door, Jimmy Tinaka as Hardboy. Music. The film's soundtrack was released on CD and cassette on December 11, 1991. 4. Main title: The Iron Claw, Brewery Battle, Noble Quest, Death and Dishonor, Private Moment, Slippery When Wet, Yakidi Yakuza, Saving Minako, Carrere and Johnny, Brewery Bust, Hide and Seek, Little Tokyo, Heavy Metal Sushi, Into the Vat, Death and Disfiguration. Production. Lester says the film was taken over by the studio and recut without his involvement. 5. Reception. Box office. Warner Brothers was not happy with the film and re-edited it, only to give it a limited theatrical run in the United States, Mexico, Australia, France, where it skipped Paris, 6 Italy, Israel, and Hungary. Except for these markets, the film was released direct-to-video in 1992. In the US opening weekend, the film grossed $455,192 from 140 theaters, which was an average of $3,251 per theater. This accounted for 20% of the film's total gross. 178. It ranked number 9 in Hungary's top 10 of 1992 overall box office grosses, according to the 1994 Variety International Film Guide, grossing $197,590 in Hungary. After Brandon Lee's untimely death while filming The Crow, 1994, movies with Lee in leading roles, such as Showdown in Little Tokyo, saw a surge in video sales. 9. The film became a cult classic among action fans after its release. Director Mark L. Lester said, "I was going for exaggerated reality. Kind of a pop art thing or a comic book. But Warner took about 10 minutes out of the film, which were pretty good actually. They changed it all around. They didn't do a big release, but I guess people liked it. 10 Brandon Lee was also very fond of the movie. I didn't have a lot